So I'm pretty deep into the Ringer podcast network these days. I mean, it's literally all I've listened to for weeks. I'm not even listening to music lately. I'm just doing a lot of yard work and listening to friendly chatter about the state of television and movies, and honestly, I'm feeling pretty good. And I do need to apologize to the podcast gods because I have been, by necessity, listening on Spotify. The Ringer has some kind of semi-exclusive deal with Spotify, which I don't quite understand. Like, the back episodes are only on there, but they're still ads, even when you listen on Spotify Premium. I don't know how Bill Simmons pulled that one off, but I tip my hat to him. I've heard the guy do an ad read for Pizza Hut literally 90 times in the last month. So, yeah, I've become a podcast on Spotify guy, and for that, I am sorry, but also will not be changing my behavior. And so when I say that I'm pretty deep, I mean, you gotta understand that I am always listening to podcasts, basically whenever I'm alone and not writing for work. So doing the dishes at night, mowing the lawn, shopping, driving, importing footage, walking. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of empty space to fill. My favorite Ringer show is called The Watch, and it's hosted by Andy Greenwald and Chris Ryan, who have been friends and have worked together for decades, and you can hear it. I love these guys. I mean, I feel like they're my older brothers. In some ways, they sort of are, because I've been reading Andy Greenwald's writing since I was a 15-year-old Spin magazine subscriber. Actually, it was Morgan's subscription. I got Rolling Stone for the family, and he got Spin. But anyway, I'm staying up on their new episodes. They got me watching The Bear on Hulu pretty early on. I'm sure by now you've either watched it and loved it, or have been told to watch it 200 times and you're going to get to it. It's so good, you really have to. But anyway, I'm also going back, way back to 2015 when The Watch started, and finding their discussions of TV shows and movies that I've loved over the last 7 years, and experiencing it through their eyes. And sometimes, you listen to an episode where they're breaking down Westworld, and you'll realize halfway through that it was recorded the day before Donald Trump was elected president. You'll listen to an episode about Top Chef and realize the pandemic was days away from ending the world. It becomes this really weird thing to re-experience the politics of the last few years, but anchored to the lives and cultural opinions of these two guys, but I am finding it absurdly, deeply cathartic. I know that Andy and Chris did not intend for their back episodes about Black Panther and Ted Lasso to be used to help me find my way out of a pandemic-induced depression, but it turns out it works for that. On this show, I think I've always been trying to make the world more legible. Mostly just for myself, but also for you and for my children. And there have been times when I felt like I was succeeding, and other times when not so much. Sometimes I listen back and I remember exactly how I was feeling, and sometimes I hear an old episode and I feel like I was trying to convince myself of something, but I'm not even sure of what anymore. And I think that what I want to be now, more consciously, is the cartographer that I have always been trying to be. I want to figure out how to map out, where we all are right now. How we got here, where we think we might be going. How can we really see it? I decided to start with a list of questions.
My plan is to talk to a bunch of people and get a bunch of answers, and then I don't know how it's going to be organized.
That's actually how I answered some of these questions. I threw them at some other people just so that I could either disagree or agree with them to begin with, to kind of formulate what I think.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start. Let's start asking the questions. So, who is the most influential person in your life?
A guy, his name was William Harrington. And he was or Uncle Bill, according to my family and his family, even though I have no relation to him. I was in third grade and I started doing martial arts, and he was the senpai, which is like the student teacher, essentially. The sensei would be the head of a dojo, and then senpai would be like the second in command, if you will. And he kind of took me under his wing in more ways than one. He began to come over to my house and hang out with my family and me and my mom and my sisters. And he would drive me to karate lessons when my mom couldn't. And I connected a lot with his nephews. He didn't have any kids and he didn't have a wife or anything. He was kind of just a solo person. And he really helped shape my character in my elementary to middle school years.
What kind of, what's something that he was like that you kind of see in yourself now?
It's so funny because on one end, he helped me shape kind of some of my morals and ethics during the time when you're doing that anyhow. And then on the other hand, I get all of his little idiosyncrasies, the things that maybe aren't lined up with those morals and ethics. One being becoming irritated at pretty small things in a similar fashion to him. But then also kind of moralizing in moments that maybe don't need it.
I have probably a similar situation too, where but it's maybe not one guy, but a bunch of these different sort of surrogate father figure guys. And it was a lot of the time people in similar situations where they didn't have kids, or they were younger, they were just about to get married and start having kids and that kind of thing. And it's funny. Yeah, I wonder about that. I'm kind of always on the lookout for that now as an adult. Because as a person who had guys in my life that were like that, strong male figures, I'm I gotta pay it forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Are you wondering if you're that, or if there's still more doing that for you? Because I think it also happens in layers. It's just another generation up or so. There's those people as well.
It definitely happens. It continues to happen, especially when you hit the phase where you first have children, there's a lot of people that kind of come out of the woodwork for you. And so that's definitely interesting. And then also I not that long ago, 2 years ago, I changed jobs, and it was funny because it's a very different culture, and there's a lot of really supportive men. In my last job, at first, at least, there were a lot of guys who were 5 or 6 years older than me and just were they just saw me as the guy coming up to replace them or something, which I really was not. I was never going to take some manager job at that company. But they were not friendly to me at all, and so it's a very different world.
Yeah. I like when you said the people come out of the woodwork when you have a child. I mean, I grew up in my mom's mom's house. So my grandma, and she's a Depression era woman from French speaking Canada, and it's a very different world than growing up in the house of your parents and their generation, especially because my mom was also raised by her. So you get kind of both of the product of her, and then now I'm becoming a product of the grandmother as well. And to bring in kind of an outside male figure is a really different thing. And then having a child, and this is kind of where I was going, my father kind of comes back into the picture now for my daughter. And it's kind of an interesting thing where it's almost skipped a generation, because now my father is in my daughter's life more than probably he was in mine, or at least emotional. I mean, he grew as well, so you would expect that to happen perhaps on this. I mean, some people maybe they stop growing mentally or emotionally.
Do you feel like your opinion of your father has changed in light of that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Although I think that happened actually before I had my daughter. Me and my dad were always fire and Tinder. We would just constantly get into these things and quarrels. We were incredibly different. And it took me actually to realize that I'm not so different than him, even though I didn't grow up with him, to be able to cross that bridge and say, hey, you know what? I can see you now. And maybe I wasn't able to see something. And it took a lot of work on my part, which is usually the opposite of, I think, what our culture generally expects, which is parents maybe need to do the work to understand the children. I mean, I obviously think that this goes both ways with people, depending on where they need to grow. But I shifted a little bit, and then I met him, and he came to me too, and then we had a daughter. So maybe it was kind of the way it needed to happen. It was kind of cool.
I'm having a very similar experience right now in my life with my dad. Just having this very different. I'm starting to do and say things that kind of make me think about, I'm oh my God, I'm becoming like him, and in a way that was initially kind of scary, but is not as scary to me now. I don't know why. But yeah, and definitely having a stronger sense of where he was coming from, like when I was a kid and everything too.
In fact, not to keep talking about podcasts managed by Bill Simmons, but I do think I really glommed onto these shows because of the version of masculinity that they present. Simmons and the men, and also women, that he populates his shows with, they can talk about music and movies with the exact same fluency and enthusiasm they use for sports. And that kind of chatter is just really appealing to me. It feels so goofy to say that it's masculine, but it is. Like, I needed more masculine chatter about Batman in my life, and I didn't know it. When I was a kid, I felt like these worlds were separate. Like, you only had room to care about either culture or sports, and obviously I chose culture, and not unrelatedly spent my whole childhood feeling very othered by most men. And I don't think that my dad was driving that, but I think he was susceptible to it. But that thinking, those early 90s ways of thinking about what was and wasn't manly, it's so broken up and scattered now. It's so lost to time that even trolls on the internet who talk about traditional masculinity have absolutely no idea what they mean when they say it. Which is how you end up with the kind of guys who used to bully me, now posting on message boards, listening to Jordan Peterson's aggrieved screeching, and exclusively eating raw meat and getting scurvy and permanent organ damage.
Who is the most influential person in your life?
This one I had a really hard time coming up with something, but I think either my friend Ignacio or my two friends, Jim and Kelsey, that live in North Carolina. But I feel like I don't have a solid parental figure, like a role model that I really look up to. But I just have three friends that I really trust their opinions, I feel like.
What's the relationship with those friends like? Is it are they the same age, or is there a differential in one direction or the other, or what do you think makes it so that you're looking up to them instead of just being on the same plane?
Mm-hmm. I'll stick with Jim and Kelsey. They I've known them for almost 10 years now, and they're in a similar-ish field to me, but they are directors and make film stuff, and they are older than me, and I've always thought they were cooler than me. So I think that I respect their opinions and what they think of me a lot, and they have a lot more experience in a lot of things than me. So I anytime I meet a new person, I'll think of if I would be able to bring them to the lake and if Jim would like them and if they're going to pass that test.
Interesting. Yeah. So that's sort of, what a relationship some people might have as with a parent. I did not have a strong father figure. Well, I mean, my dad was around, but just not super involved. So I think I had this succession of different father figures. Mm-hmm. And then there was this kind of gap in my 20s where there was just none. There was just no father figure around whatsoever. And so it was kind of that was those were the wilderness years,
Oh yeah.
Because there was never one guy.
Did you have any teachers in high school?
Yeah, that was my main source of father figures, was teachers.
What did they teach?
Different stuff. Obviously English teachers are always a big influence on me, always have been, but most of my English teachers have been women. Mm-hmm. So there was one, the guy who ran the honor society at my high school was also one of my English teachers. And so he was kind of a paternal figure. Although I was in an honors English class with a very, very troubled guy who eventually murdered someone and went to prison. My English teacher's surrogate father energy was mostly directed to that guy. But then my biology teacher is actually still a friend of mine. My biology teacher was kind of sort of not super fatherly, but he would come to all of my band's shows, Mm-hmm. So that was a big deal because that was not something that my dad was doing. And so I kind of even at 17, I kind of figured out that was what was happening. It was I was getting a little bit of older male support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I had, now that I'm thinking on it more, I could like say my multimedia and photography teacher was definitely one of them. And then my psychology teacher, for sure. He was like an Irish guy that was way overqualified, teaching like college level psychology on us, and was totally abusive, low key, just like casting experiments on us and not telling us, conditioning us, like humiliating us in front of the class. But I was just like, yeah, you're my father.
Strong spirit with a body, couldn't get asylum. The cost of living high, don't cross the picket line to get the virus. Wildcat has got him in a bind, stay inside. No, I came from out the thick and smiling. Mad hat is capping every line, it doesn't matter to the 10 and 5. They start hacking when they can't shrink us. I found a middle and a bit of balance. Fever in the cabbage, I knew where we was headed. I ain't counting no blessings, I sure as shit can mesh. Looking for some feasible methods to free yourself. Split it with my hand like cigarettes. Flick oil in a fish gill. I fill a void with the pen, fill the beer. Shrill, couple stains that I couldn't shield. My brother brain that we couldn't shield. Couple came, couple went still. And what remained of the wolves nil.
So I recently rewatched Steven Spielberg's 2005 War of the Worlds. I definitely also saw it in my teens. The imagery of the destroyed post-invasion landscape is seared into my brain. Although, interestingly, all the kind of post-9/11 stuff earlier in the movie, didn't remember. You'd think that would have stuck out in 2005. But in general, the visual style of that movie is fantastic. In those years, we got a lot of high contrast, slightly blown out cinematography, but most of it, like I'm thinking of Dallas Buyers Club, if you remember that movie, looked pretty bad. Obviously not so with Spielberg. His director of photography was his longtime collaborator Janusz Kaminski, and it's such a cohesive look that it really heightens the unreality of the experience in the best way. And speaking of unreality, Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise plays a divorced dad in War of the Worlds, working very hard to keep a constantly screaming Dakota Fanning alive in the apocalypse, and I find myself reflecting on his overall dad energy, which he somehow manages to have and reject at the same time. Like, he almost never plays a direct father figure, but he's a divorced dad or a surrogate dad pretty often. Jerry Maguire, Maverick, War of the Worlds. There are a few pointedly childless roles like Eyes Wide Shut and Magnolia, but those movies notably stand in contrast to his usual style. And I mean, in most of the modern Tom Cruise canon, he's basically playing a robot, but a robot with a distinctly dad-like sense of humor. I guess it also warrants mentioning that Tom Cruise is in fact a dad in real life with 3 kids, and yet in the public consciousness, we don't really think about that at all, in the same way that other stars on that level, like Brad Pitt and Jay-Z, are sort of fundamentally dads. Why does Tom Cruise so rarely go full dad? Is he avoiding it? Does he think that he can't sell it? Not to keep bringing it back to sports talk, but there's an infamous moment in Oblivion, which is an incredibly good Tom Cruise movie that's currently on HBO Max, where he visits this abandoned stadium and he waxes poetic about the big championship game that was held there once. It rings totally weird and false in the movie, and people make fun of it out of context, but actually, within the context of the story, it really works, for spoilery reasons that I won't give away because I know for a fact that not enough people have seen Oblivion. But I mean, I don't disagree that Tom Cruise almost certainly can't talk about sports like a normal human being. I can't either, that's how I know. But, like I've been saying here, I think that binary is gone now. I don't think Tom Cruise has anything to worry about. Come over to Dad Team Tom. You are, like, so welcome here, I can't even begin to express it.
What's the longest show you've ever been to?
Probably, I think Monsters of Folk.
Yeah.
Which was like Conor Oberst, Jim James, and M. Ward.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the overall show wasn't super long, but there was no opening act or anything.
Yeah.
Because they rotated. So it was sometimes all 3 of them and sometimes 2 or 1. And so they were able to just do that for like, I think they played like 30 something songs.
Yeah.
What
The
about
longest show I ever went to, and it was the first concert I ever went to, like an actual show, was I went to see The Who at Madison Square Garden, and I didn't know how concerts worked at the time. So the opening came out, and I'm like, that looks nothing like them. And then they played like for 20 minutes, and I was like, the show's over already? They didn't even play any Who songs. And then The Who came out, and they played like almost their entire catalog. I think it went on for 4 hours, or it may have just been that it felt like it because I didn't really have a good sense of time at that point in my life.
Yeah. Well, those guys that it's like Bruce Springsteen, right? It's like you pay, well, now because of dynamic pricing, whatever, they charge you $2,000. But back when a Bruce Springsteen ticket was like $250, yeah, that's a lot. But it's like at the same time, it's like going to 4 concerts.
Yep, that's true.
Okay, so here's my first question for you.
Yes.
Who do you think is the most influential person in your life?
It has to be my mom. I don't really know, and I thought about this a lot because I don't really know how you can honestly answer. Anybody can say, other than the person that raised you, that who else could it be, really? So I don't know. I don't know if that maybe is a boring answer to that question. Well, before we move on, because I think I also wanted to add that I would say that you are a hugely influential person in my life.
Oh, really?
Yes, absolutely. I would not have the career that I have right now were it not for you.
Well, hold on. You got to tell me about that then.
Yes. Okay, because I've been thinking about maybe one day I get to talk to Zach about the influence he's had on me over the years. Do you remember back when YouTube was pushing this thing called I forget if it was rollbacks or leanbacks, but it was just playlists under a different name?
No, I don't.
What they had was, is it a good idea to microwave this episode was in there? And subscribing to that, they're like YouTube, I forget if they automatically subscribe you to other channels or just suggested them at that time, but you're one of those suggested ones. So I subscribed to you and was watching your stuff over the years and kind of following you from that point on. I was always just so fascinated by the stuff that you were putting out, so interested by the ways that you would edit and incorporate music into what you were doing, and was just always really engaged with the content you were putting out. But you also, I feel really showed me, and probably a lot of people, a path that could be creative and career fulfilling and still be a normal life, and be satisfying and fulfilling on all those areas. And so that was the kind of thing that encouraged me to think that I could do something similar. So at my job now, I run our podcasts and our YouTube channel.
Awesome.
So yeah, so that I don't think that I would be doing that stuff today were it not for kind of the example I feel like you've demonstrated.
Well, I'm so happy to hear that. I feel like doing that sort of thing was something I was figuring out as I was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like I was onto something. And so I was kind of hoping that people would understand that too.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know. I know so many people who are creative or who want to be creative or who want to have this artistic element of their lives. And it's they don't seem to know where to put it.
Yeah.
Way more. I talk to way more people that are oh, I used to love to paint or play music or whatever, but I just can't find the time for it or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't have the creative energy for it or something. And I've just felt oh God, I hope that never happens to me,
Yeah.
And also how is it happening? Because
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand how you run out of creative energy.
Yeah.
I don't really think that happens.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's something people think happens. So the more that we can convince people that there are other paths, that's great.
So today I was visiting a construction site for work. There's this program that's called MainWorks. It helps people in recovery re-enter the workforce. It's a great organization. Anyway, I met this kid there, who was working, and he told me that what he was really interested in was video editing. And so, that little pay it forward bat signal that I'm always looking for went off. And I just immediately gave him a few tips for what to download and what to work on. And I'm going to get in touch with him and see what else I can help with. But it's so funny how hard it is to convey to someone, like, the advice that I'm giving you is real and the path that you're thinking about is very possible. I don't know, like, advice is such a genre that it can sometimes sound like small talk. I'm not sure how to overcome that. But as it turns out, hiding your advice inside a weird podcast is maybe a better way. In that last clip that you just heard, which was with this guy, Tom, it was so gratifying to hear that I'd helped someone figure out a career path, which is something that I am always saying I want to do. But even at the end there, as I was criticizing people who claim they lack creative energy, I was seeing my own limited perspective, because it just so happens that what interests me and Tom and the kid at the construction site artistically is very commercially transferable. If you're really interested in singing, you can't necessarily parlay that into a corporate job with good benefits. The scope of my influence is smaller and more specific than I sometimes grasp. So maybe that's the first thing that I need to understand about this map I'm trying to make. It doesn't cover a lot of square miles. But that's okay, I think. What you heard today on the podcast is the very beginning of a process by which I'm going to try to get a better sense of where we should be going. I've been interviewing people for weeks, asking them the same questions, trying to build more of a solid and dependable format for this show. I don't have it yet. I kind of want to take the rest of the year to figure it out loud. In some episodes, we'll probably stay on a single question like we did today, but in others, we won't. And in the next episode, Morgan and I are going to try out a new format for our usual conversations about movies and music and TV. That's part of this project, too. So if you'd like to sit for one of my test interviews, shoot me an email. ZachLittle, ZACLITTLE, @gmail.com, and I'll send you the list of questions, and we'll figure out some time to talk over Zoom. If you've already expressed interest, by the way, I haven't forgotten about you. I'll check in soon. Thank you for listening, and thanks to David and Bree and Tom, today's guests. You'll hear more from them and from others soon.